Hello guys, this is your friend and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is what if Devil Naruto got harem with Kushina, Mito, Kami and Femme Kyuubi, part 3. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this and comment for next part. And now let's start the fanfic. An emotion he rarely ever feels. That scent musky, yet intoxicating, was the inner thoughts of our very own Devil Emperor, our favorite nightmare of Makai. If one would ever hear those very thoughts they would have passed out right there to hear such a thing, for it was known to all the entity of such power had such thoughts on the matter. Placing the thought for later did Naruto just snap his fingers resulting in the slightly messed up bed to make itself in an invisible shift of wind. He gave it but a glance before getting a pair of clean clothes for the new day, a day he knew all too well would be busy for all residents in the castle. Mostly for Kushina, Mito and Akemi though, he thought in mild amusement as he pictured the three women's faces for their training that was to come, mostly Akemi's though. That brought a smirk on his face that was so filled with the utter malice and evil that it would have made even Yami, the god of Makai, cringe. Seeing the bed done and his clothes over his arm did he walk to the shower ready to cleanse his body before starting the day. Hellwing Castle Kitchen. Back with both Kushina and Mito, it had been only 15 minutes since their little accident in Naruto's room due to their awakening from their slumber. Since then two have been oddly silent between each other as both were fixing breakfast for all of them. Kushina being the one happily humming as she stood over the stove with shockingly enough a pink apron that said, "One hot mama." Moving swiftly and expertly over the stove did Kushina stir and toss the food she was cooking for both herself and Mito as she moved to another pan before she gracefully flipped a pancake into the air. 1, 2, 3 they went onto a plate with practiced ease that is before she also opened the oven pulling 2 trays having what looked 2 giant legs. Happily smiling all the while as she placed the 2 trays on the other side of the stove did she never notice Mito's amused gaze on her. She herself was setting the table for breakfast and such, now she never did this before but seeing as they were using this castle as a home as well she'd think it'd be good to have a somewhat normal breakfast before the training began. Oh, she knew it was coming. If anything like tomorrow was any indication, not only Akemi but herself and Kushina would be receiving even more training and more hellish than before. It sent shivers down her spine. She'd admit it, she feared the regime her master gives her and Kushina but couldn't deny it was effective. Very effective. The sound of steps could be heard which made both Mito and Kushina look back to see a sleepy-eyed Naruki walking down the stairs, the sleepy Akemi in tow. The little newly changed Naruki rubbed her eyes while giving out a cute yawn that made both Mito and Kushina giggle. That is before her ears perked up and her nose twitch. What's that smell? She spoke looking around. That is before she laid eyes on her Ka-san looking at her with an amused expression as she and Mito placed plates on the table. Turning to her daughter did she give a smile. It's breakfast Masumi, now come on you two, let us sit down and wait for master before we eat, she said ushering the two toward their seats. Naruki expectantly beside her Ka-san as she looked strangely at the stack of pancakes on her plate. Lightly she started to poke at it, which was quite the funny little scene to the other 3 women, even more so when she sniffed it like the curious child she was. That is until they heard another sound of footsteps somehow sound the area. The overwhelming presence of that which only engulfed the room made both Kushina and Mito stiffen and Akemi become extremely nervous as Naruki blinked confusingly at her mother's flinch. They looked up at the stairs to see one Hellwing Naruto, the master in all his glory, walking down impassive as ever, yet he seemed somehow rejuvenated in a way, for his very aura just showed he was back to normal from his overly exhausted state, and even then there was something about him that was there. What it was they couldn't figure out, but both Mito and Kushina could see it was something, and it made them smile seeing as he was now more relaxed than before. As he walked his purple eyes glanced down at them with something akin to confusion to what was going on, that is before they settled on the food on the table. Suddenly realization came into his eyes that as before it was squashed down as he came up to his own seat, which was at the head of the table itself. Sitting down did he give each of the residents a look over. He could see Akemi's nervous state, which was understandable after all that had happened yesterday, and Naruki, the little girl's confused yet silent one, showed she was at least respectful. Looking at the last two, did he see them strangely nervous yet kept it hidden best they could? He could still see it though, thus making him note later on to talk to them. Glancing at his food at the table, seeing it set up in a tray that had bowls of selective food, that of which made him raise an eyebrow. Giving a small shrug, he began to eat, signaling the others to do the same, which was funny, for soon Naruki needed help eating her own, which Kushina cut hers while also teaching her to do it at the same time. Overall, it was a strange yet somehow pleasant silence for the group, for to Mito and Kushina, they never had a breakfast with their master at the table in such a manner. As they finished eating though, did Naruto get their attention before speaking. Kushina spoke the devil, getting the attention of his beautiful red-haired slave who was taking the dishes with her, so when she went to get his own he had spoken. Why yes. Her voice strangely hesitant and nervous of what he was gonna say. Sure, she can be the fiery woman she was always known for, but when it comes to the man that changed her life for the better and showed such unbelievable power, and even more so the one who took her daughter away from the life she had in Ningenkai. It was understandable she was nervous. The food was excellent. I never knew you were such a skilled cook, especially the cooked org leg meat and the blood herb seasoning, truly that was very sublime, he said with approval in his tone. Honestly, every word he said was true, her food was just perfect. Even for him, that was the best thing he has ever tasted in his long immortal life. Yes, he ate meat from dead demons, what other demon didn't? Raw or cooked, seasoned or fresh, did not matter, but what Kushina did was just purely scrumptious. Kushina herself, hearing his words, was frozen on the spot as Naruto's words reverberated within her mind repeatedly. That is before her cheeks started to flush greatly, so much so it looked like she was gonna pass out due to how fast the blood was flowing to her head. Giving a quick yet respectful bow, did she speak. Thank you, Naruto-sama, I don't deserve such praise. Ebane, she said, to which the man just gave a wave of his hand while shaking his head. Pushing his own chair in, did he grasp his plate and walk towards the sink to wash his own dish. While doing so, did he speak. Nonsense, you deserve as such, but nevertheless I want you and Mito to gather both Naruki and Akemi and meet in the living room. It is time we began to plan out the training for all of you. She just gave a curt nod before leaving. Good thing too, since Naruto never saw her heartfelt smile nor her giant blush that could make the very flames of hellfire look cold in comparison. But she did as told and went to gather along with Mito the other two before they left for the living chambers, knowing it was gonna be a serious discussion between Naruto and them all. Especially with what he told them last night, if that was anything to go by. If only they knew how true their thoughts were. Hellwing Castle living chambers. Within the living chambers was the assembled group of 3 women with little Naruki sitting on her Ka-san's lap. All 4 on the couches, they stared upon the master of their lives, more so for Mito, Kushina and Akemi, while Naruki just looked around confusingly. The 3 older women couldn't help but be extremely nervous from the serious atmosphere that engulfed the chambers. It was like a never-ending void of darkness swallowing you up into the nothingness that is the void. Turning around, did Naruto eye each and every occupant before him, each his slave in a manner either through a contract of their choosing or their own choice. 2 former humans, shifted devils, a forsaken Biju ready to do any and all to prove herself to him, and a small child daughter of his second slave and hybrid between Kitsune and devil. Hey, interesting. Naruto, stomping his inner thoughts, collected himself before speaking. Now, as Mito and Kushina know, we now have 2 new guests added to our little group. I don't think we need any introduction, seeing as you all know each other by some extension. To which was true, all 4 of them had a connection to one another, linking them like a spiritual line of sorts. The girls gave a nod, or in Naruki's case a confused blink tilt of her adorable little head. Understandably, she was confused with Naruto's words, yet all she cared about was that she was with her Ka-san and in a home where she never has to look around for the slightest attack on her. He soon continued after seeing their complete attention. Now, as of today, I'm gonna be planning a training schedule for Akemi. Now that she's my slave, she will do any and all the training I give her and not once complain. I shall be putting you through controlling your yukai till I say otherwise, physical conditioning to strengthen your body and power, for right now you are nothing more than a newborn infant compared to the weakest of demons in both Lucifer and Yami's armies. We will also be working on you controlling your Kitsune no Bai, Fox Fire, and your second affinity. All Kitsunes have that being darkness itself. I will also be personally training you and Kushina and Mito in honing your reflexes with my own personal way of doing so. I want you to increase your yukai and control, so for when you do become the Kyuubi, this will increase your chance of controlling the power boost without going insane like your predecessor. Meaning you will also be learning how to control the 7 Sin Yukai gates without attaining the backlash, he explained to the group. He ignored the wide-eyed look of Akemi as he kept speaking, also during the test with you against Mito yesterday. What I saw was your instincts taking over, and while that is somewhat of a good thing for Kitsunes and Kitsunes only, it's also deadly as well. For if you don't have control over your instincts, you will make bad choices that could lead to your death. So you will also be learning how to master that as well. You are to never let your instincts control you like that again and stomp them down, thus controlling them, making you far superior in a fight, the devil said, making the pale wide-eyed Akemi give a slow nod as she processed everything he said through her mind. Naruto saw this before he looked into her eyes, thus making her flinch when she saw the cold yet stone-firm purple orbs stare right into her own crimson ruby-slitted ones. She utterly felt the oxygen within her leave as her whole body started to chaotically tremble. She was sure if she was standing that she would have fallen to her knees. It was like staring. He had his hand firmly wrapped around her soul and was ready to pull it out at any time. Though that wasn't very far from the truth. Seeing her state, Naruto spoke toward the obviously trembling Biju. Now, do you understand? He said in a tone that broke any and all argument. He both ignored her trembling pale state or the child called Naruki worried-filled eyes. He did take note both Mito and Kushina were impassive, knowing Akemi needed to answer this truthfully and honestly to show she was truly determined to see this through, even to face his training. Yes, I am Naruto-sama. I will follow through it all and without a single complaint. I swear it to you. My lord. Her words filled with the utmost honesty a kitsune could give. It seemed to do the job since Naruto gave a slight nod, that is before he turned his attention to both Kushina and Mito, making them straighten under his powerful yet cold gaze. Good. As for both Mito and Kushina, you two shall have your training up 10 times than before. You two will also be participating with Akemi in honing your reflexes as well, seeing as the both of you need it as well. Like I told you both last night, things are gonna get very bloody and very soon. That is why your training will be up so far and so fast. I will also be doing my personal training when I get the chance as I train you three. We will also by the end of each week have a spar. And occasion I'll take each of you on a training trip, as the two left behind will continue their training regimen, upping it up each day. He said to the 3 women, thus they nodded. Even if all 3 were pale white, their eyes widened greatly more so on Akemi's part than Mito or Kushina. Now with this settled, we shall begin training as of today, so go get yourselves ready. After which meet me in the back so we can begin your training. His tone sent shivers down all 3 of the demonesses' spines while making the very hairs on the back of their necks stand straight up. And with that the girls' training began. Oh, the horrors they faced! Though what awaited them all would soon shift the very future for all living beings, for all of Ningenkai, Makai and heaven. 5 days later. It's only been 5 days since Naruto began the training of his newest slave and upped the training regimen for Mito and Kushina. And in just those days alone did Akemi have the word pain completely thrown out the window. Her whole understanding of the word was shattered before her very eyes as she was pushed into the training her master gave her. In just 1 day alone she couldn't move a single part of her body, falling face first to the ground in sheer utter exhaustion, making her completely immobile. It took Mito to carry her into the castle to rest up on the first. It was somewhat amusing to see her, the strongest of the Biju and queen of the Kitsune race, reduced to a new slave of Makai's most powerful devil, but more so. To have fallen out in exhaustion alone, being completely out before she hit the ground. Of course she wasn't the only one, for on that same day both Mito and Kushina were introduced to their training. Having it laid before them added with it up 10 times than before made it all the more harder and hellish for them. They persevered sure, but they were almost no better than Akemi, yet having years of dealt with their master's training gave them a stronger physique. Thus they could take much more punishment. But that didn't stop Kushina uttering tiredly as she, Mito and Akemi were leaving the training site that their master's training was truly the boot camp from hell. And that was not all. The training to hone their reflexes was something that could only be described as pure horror, for this training was second to sparing against him. What it was that Naruto cast multiple lightning spells on either of them, thus making them dodge. Now if this was normal lightning it would have been a walk in the park. But this was by no means normal lightning. It was the pitch-black purple streaked lightning that Naruto was close to killing Akemi with. The very lightning that had enough power to kill the Kyuubi itself. So yes, the three did their best to dodge the lightning spells, especially Akemi, since if she didn't, well, she would have died. Luckily her kitsune reflexes saved her on multiple occasions. Though on the fourth day of their training did both Mito and Kushina receive shocks of their lives when they were soaking in the hot spring after a hard day of training. Flashback. Soaking in the hot spring was both Mito and Kushina releasing sighs of content as the water eased their tensed muscles and injuries as they healed. The two women's faces were slightly flushed due to the temperature of the hot spring. As they relaxed the warm steaming water did Kushina idly glance to Mito. You know, Mito-chan, sometimes I wonder if Naruto-sama is trying to kill us with his training, she said, to which Mito despite herself gave out a small chuckle. Deciding to answer her, she spoke. That may sound true, but we both know Naruto-sama would never ever kill us intentionally unless we betrayed him, then he would, but we would never do that. He just wants us to be stronger than before. The war with Lucifer and Yami is making him feel all the more tense. He wants us to protect ourselves should he not be there. So in a way, from what I can see, he cares for us in his own way, and that is through this training. Well, that's what I can decipher, she said, sighing contentedly a bit as her thoughts did go back to her master, making the flush go a bit deeper. Kushina was the same. As Mito's words replayed through her mind, she herself remembered the times she ever rarely saw her master care for them. Remembering the time he commented on her beauty, her cooking, and the time he actually let her lean against him during Mito and Akemi's fight. Now that made her blush intensely, but not as much as the memory of both her and Mito sleeping in the same bed as him, thus ending in that predicament. Thinking about it made her whole face just explode in a cherry red, which gained Mito's attention. Worried for the woman she sees as a little sister, she spoke. Oi. Kushina-chan, you okay? Oi oi, she said, worried for the redhead. Though when she only got a undignified response, she quickly started to shake and comically, might I add, slap across face repeatedly. After a few times Mito finally got a response when Kushina blinked blankly at her, not caring about the stinging pain of being slapped so many times. Looking through our glazed eyes did she give a goofy smile while mumbling, "Nay Mito-chan, sorry, I was just remembering that event with Naruto-kun, he, you remember, don't you?" she said somewhat teasingly. When Mito heard about that, she immediately flushed a blood red, remembering exactly what happened. It was still fresh in her mind like it only happened yesterday. Just thinking about herself in such a compromising position, her oh so lovely dream about her master. Just remembering herself rubbing against his muscled rock hard body, mumbling her love for him over and over, sent chills down her spine. That's when she remembered that particular talk she and Kushina had right after that, which led to her blushing all the more, but controlled enough to speak. "Anyo Kushina-chan, I think we need to talk about that," she said, referencing to that, made Kushina completely come out of her stupor. She knew what Mito was talking about, since they did promise to discuss about this matter lest that predicament happens again. Just thinking about like Mito sent her into a flushing mess. Looking at Mito wearily, she gave a nod. Hi. I think we do. Ebane. She stuttered, making Mito nod in confirmation despite her blush. A tense yet nervous silence followed for the two, which was slowly start to take effect on them as both were fidgeting. As the seconds followed by, the two got worse and worse until finally they couldn't help themselves. I love Naruto-sama, I love Naruto-sama. They said in perfect unison, and once again a now immense agonizing silence followed as the two beautiful women stared at the other with wide shocked eyes at the other's proclamation. Well, that is before again both pointed at one another and spoke. Why you like Naruto-sama, Naruto-kun? Again they spoke in unison, only this time Mito gave a shaky sigh before looking at the equally shocked Kushina. Gathering her shaky thoughts, did Mito speak first, this time breaking the awkward silence. So, I was right, you like him as well. I had my suspicions, but to hear you say it with such a fiery proclamation shows you love him just as much as I do, Kushi-chan. She said to her fellow slave and sister. She got a positive response when the redhead blushed at her words before giving a hesitant response, yet her words were filled with as much love and passion that has made Mito's smile all the wider. Why yes, I've loved him for a long time now, for as long as I've been with him I can't help but feel when I'm with him I am complete. It's hard to describe, but when he just commented me on my beauty that one time, that alone sent me into a blissful state that sent my heart practically soaring. I love him so much and dearly wish to stay by his side for the rest of our eternal lives and the end of days. Even then I'll love him forever and ever. Kushina stated with both her hands closed to her chest in a praying fashion. Her cheeks now slightly pink as she expressed herself in her feelings for the man she loved to her fellow sister. He saved my baby girl Naruki-chan despite knowing there would be consequences. He went and did so. He's given me and Naruki a new life that I can honestly say is much better than my old one. I owe him everything he's given to me, and I will pay in full with everything I can give back, whether that be my life, my very soul. I'd gladly give my love to him in full, just to be with him and by his side for eternity, she said, a few tears escaping her eyes. Mito throughout Kushina's talk was staring into her violet eyes, seeing the genuine love and affection she had for Naruto just as she did. Closing her eyes, Mito wrapped Kushina in a hug, bringing her closer to her, which the younger woman responded by hugging her back. Running a hand through her hair, Mito let out a small sigh which soon turned into a soft smile directed at the woman in her arms. You know, Kushina-chan, sometimes you can be so much stronger than myself. To admit this must have took a lot of courage, something that I lack when it comes to this kind of thing. Let me tell you, what you've said is just like myself. When I first met him, our master, I was honestly both scared of him but also entranced by him. A devil of Makai is what I truly saw him when I first met him, she said, making the woman pull back to look at her, showing she was listening to her. Seeing this, Mito smiled before continuing, but after a while I saw him differently. He is more than just the feared Akuma devil of Makai. I saw him as the man that saved my life from a fate worse than death, a fate of slavery and servitude. From that day forward I eagerly awaited for his return to take my soul and finish our deal. I found it enticing in his presence even when I died. As time passed during our time together, I grew closer to him even if he doesn't know it or not. I love him so much to the point I'd die for him with a smile on my face. Even one day when he told me I looked beautiful without my hair done up in a bun. On that day my feelings for him, no matter how ridiculous it sounds, grew from just that one compliment, she said, her eyes glazing over in remembrance of that day. Kushina, hearing this, smiled even more as she hugged Mito tighter. Looking down at her, Mito's eyes softened before placing her head on Kushina's own, sinking a bit further into the steamy water. Our master, Naruto-kun, he is a very complicated man for sure, but he's one I would never leave. It's been a small dream of mine just to make that man smile other than when he's fighting in battles or killing, to make him smile for something other than violence or mutilating his enemies. My love for him, you could say, runs deep, very deep, spoke the equally rosy pink flushed Mito. Kushina heard her words as she embraced Mito. Feeling her hands running through her hair, she let out a sigh of content before slowly she started to speak. I see, but you know, Mito-chan, if we want to stop those predicaments from happening again until we tell him how we feel, we're gonna need to outlet our emotions in another way, that is, she said, pulling back, now tears gone, but her flush still in place, if anything it was darker than before. You catch my drift? She said in a husky tone that sent shivers down Mito's spine, even more so when she saw that smirk on Kushina's face that was somehow infectious, for it spread across her angelic face. Leaning toward her, she spoke. I think I can agree with that. Kushi-chan. And with that, somehow the steam got more visible as the two women closed the distance, and before their lips touched in a lip lock which the two stayed in, giving the occasional for the other partner. Slowly the two sank deeper into the hot spring as the steam became more and more visible till they were no longer visible. If anyone were to be near the hot springs at this time, they would have heard small feminine s of pleasure from within, as well shifting shadows of females mashed against one another. Good thing Naruto wasn't near there, as he was training Akemi, or Naruki for that matter. If only they knew what was happening behind there. Flashback end. Ever since that day, both Mito and Kushina were strangely a lot closer than ever before, expressing their feelings for the man they loved and seeing they needed an outlet for their pent-up emotions. They went with different methods, some could say. They were sisters and practically knew one another like they lived the other person's life. Of course they kept their actions a secret from Naruto and from both Akemi and Naruki. That would be a little awkward if that was known by them. Of course, due to this, the two women were now a lot more relaxed and could further concentrate on their training with their pent-up emotions released. They still both loved their master dearly, and on that night promised one another they would show him how much they loved him. No matter long it would take them, they will show him one way or another and bring a smile to his face. One that wasn't used for either killing demons, slaughtering armies of Yami, or Lucifer's men. A smile they would cherish forever if they can bring it out of him. But that in itself is a challenge. But like the fiery women they were more so Kushina, they wouldn't give up till they made that goal a reality, but also in one way or another, express their feelings to him. So they won't have to keep it pent up every time they walk by his side or be in his mere presence. Other than that, though, not much had changed, with only Naruto noticing them working harder and more concentrated than ever before. It made him raise an eyebrow at their actions, but after a while just gave them a nod of approval, to which they blushed before giving bows, showing their gratitude. That wasn't the only thing for watching the three women train was the little Naruki, who at seeing their training was practically awed at the sight. Understandably, she as a child was expected to be awed at such a sight, yet even more excited at seeing such things. Naruki had surprisingly enough asked Naruto politely yet excitingly if she could learn at what she deemed as the super cool moves Ka-san was doing. Yet to the child's disappointment, Naruto denied it, for this training would kill her no doubt. Her body was too young to deal with the ungodly strain of what he would need to teach her to just get up to speed with the normal training. So that was why right now Naruki was now seen walking with Akemi, as the little girl wanted to go outside the castle for a bit, and Kushina, trusting Akemi with Naruki's safety, let them go with Naruto's somewhat acceptance. Now originally Naruki was at first upset she couldn't train, but, like the smart little girl she is for her age, she with the help of her Ka-san told her that the repercussions of her training in what they were doing, the consequences and all. Understanding at least a little, she was still upset over it all. That was why she wanted to go outside and play like any other child her age would. Smiling up at Akemi, who smiled back at the girl she's come to see as her own daughter, and technically was her daughter by technicality. She held the little girl's hand with her own as they walked over the tree that was a pretty big size naturally so, since it was nurtured in the soil of Eden itself. Only as she and Naruki were walking did neither of them see the shadowed figure within the forest glaring at her specifically, with only the sight of his white angel wings being seen. Demonic scum, trying to poison the chosen one, no longer. With that he moved. Same time Hellwing Castle. As this went on, within the Hellwing Castle both Mito and Kushina could be seen laying down on the couches, utterly exhausted from their training, disheveled and injured, yet they were already healing. Their mental exhaustion though wouldn't heal the same way. Shame. Naruto himself was looking at the two in approval. They were taking to their upgraded training quickly enough, and so too was Akemi, even if she was near death every time. He slowly nodded though that the results were already showing that Akemi was in only 5 days stronger than she was before, not overly so, but she showed improvement. Though as he slowly gazed out at the window he couldn't shake the feeling something was about to happen. The embodiment of slight anxiety settled into him, that which made him slightly frown in both confusion yet to his own confusion anger. Yet why? Ever since he let Akemi and Naruki outside for a bit he was hit with a sudden rush of something that which resulted in him frowning further. What is this? Sense of dread? That's when he and Kushina and Mito felt it. The sudden spike of power coming down on them, yet none flinched, but they did feel the holy power within. Thus making both Mito and Kushina gain worried expressions as Naruto's own eyes narrowed as they suddenly flashed a dark crimson when he felt that power. Though that's when he reached out with his senses only to feel Akemi's power signature incredibly low in Naruki. Sensing Naruki's made his fist clench so tight it drew blood, for hers was gone. This better not be what I think it is, or there is gonna be hell pay. Reacting quickly, Naruto turned to both Mito and Kushina before speaking. Girls, come, we have an intruder outside the castle. Let's go, he said, but as the girls were coming into shock they could feel his pure anger rolling off him in waves. Why yes, Naruto-sama. They spoke, and with that the three quickly disappeared in 3 pillars of hellfire. 2 of them hoping both Akemi and Naruki were okay, while the last was a different case altogether. Same time, Kami's court. As this was going on we could see in the court of Kami once again the sound of arguing was being thrown back and forth on the recent events of heaven's #1 enemy besides Lucifer himself. With the recent actions of one devil have sent the once controlled and somewhat calm court of the all-powerful deities into disarray and total chaos. One deity blamed the other. Insults were thrown to another, even the higher-than-thou deities were acting immature to this recent uproar that has shifted heaven off course and into the proverbial realm of disorder. Basically the lower and mid-level deities were acting like spoiled little children that just had their favorite toy taken from them. Hellwing has gone too far this time. Not only has he taken in the Chosen One's mother as his slave, but now has the very Chosen One in his damned clutches. We can't let him get away with this too long. Have we let him go with his sins against us? Yelled out one of this very deities, this being the infamous Susanoo, elder sibling of Izanagi's children and god over the storms. His outcry caused even further chaos within the very court. Usually the deity is calm and kept to himself, but with this recent action even he himself is outraged by this being's action against them. It was like spitting in their faces before rubbing it in, further antagonizing them. Honestly, he didn't know why Kami or Megami for that matter were lenient on the said being. Maybe it had something to do with them watching over him for so long. Now said deities were both extremely annoyed with their fellow deities, if you could call them that, with how they were acting. Yes, Naruto had performed a heinous act against them and all of heaven, but in reality they were relieved for him doing such a thing. Kami by all right was inwardly thanking him over and over inwardly, while berating herself for even putting that damnable prophecy on her in the first place. She may be the strongest deity of all of them, second only to the god of creation Izanagi himself, but she had her faults and this was her biggest one. She could only once again thank Naruto for this, inwardly correcting her mistake, even albeit in his own way, which in itself was unique. Yet she had to keep appearances, so standing up she let out a small burst of her power, quickly silencing all of the deities in the room and making them fall flat on their asses in their respective seats. All of them, unlike Megami, was shaking in their seats from the immense pressure of power that Kami had just given off. If there was one thing they all agreed on, it was that. Never ever piss off Kami, for she is called the deity of life for a damned reason. Giving it, she can as easily take it away. Now that you all are done acting like little children, we can truly begin this meeting. Now, as you all know by now, one Hellwing Naruto, Akuma and Akuma Titan, Demon Titan, of Makai has committed the act of taking not only a human to Makai, but not just any human, the one I have chosen to be the savior of humanity. It is a heinous act for sure, but let me remind you all, if he hadn't arrived she would have been dead by now, she said, making a few of them flinch at that. That is before Yami snorted before speaking. That may be true, Kami-sama, but do not forget taking a human to Makai is a serious offense. He was allowed to take both Uzumaki Mito and Uzumaki Kushina's souls and bodies to Makai since they made a deal with him. Now Uzumaki Naruki is different. For one, she never made a deal with him, and two, she is the chosen one, thus that should give her an even more important role. Considering this, spoke the deity and ruler of hell. His response got a few nods from other deities, for it was true, taking a human to Makai if they had nothing to do with that demon was against the laws set by Kami herself. If that mortal had no affiliation with that certain demon but was still taken to Makai, then by all rights the demon is said to be killed on sight by all means. But there are certain conditions. Kami inwardly cursed Yami but outwardly nodded with his response. That is true, but that is not the case, for you see in Naruki's case it's that she is in reality when Hellwing Naruto marked Kushina during her pregnancy, so, but before she could finish. The court doors slammed open, alerting all deities within. Looking toward those that interrupted the meeting came in a bloody struggling armored angel guard. A few deities let out a gasp or two as Kami and Megami quickly stood up, urgent, concerned expression planted on their faces. Daisuke Taicho, what happened to you? Questioned Megami. Said Taicho slowly walked forward, blood dripping from his severely injured body. He spoke while doing so, but his words alone made all the deities pale and made Kami and Megami both become shocked than the rest. It was Nora. He and the Crusader Legion, the ones you put in solitude, they broke out, and Nora set out to Makai, to get the chosen one. His men held us off. I'm sorry, why? He trailed off before falling, that is before he was caught by a fellow guard. As he was dragged off to the medical bay, his words rang throughout all of the court. Some were shocked, well, mostly all of them were shocked at the news recently given to them. Hell, even Yami was wide-eyed at the words spoken, well, that is before the words of a trembling Kami rang throughout the court. The words spoke of how Kami was feeling at the moment, and that was both anger and, shockingly enough, a slight trace of fear. Those fools have no idea what they've done, spoke the now trembling Kami. Megami was in a similar state, as she too knew exactly was about to happen. Right then, before anyone could question her. Boom! A giant explosion of pure power pressured on court, as well as making the very chamber crack and tremble. Some deities had to hold onto the table to keep their damned balance from both the pressure and shaking of their very realm. That is before they felt a very familiar spike of yukai that made all of the deities' eyes widen at both realizing just who it was and how powerful the yukai was itself. Megami could only utter a few words that summed up all their thoughts at that moment as she stared at the swirling mass of darkness and hellfire outside of the Crusader Legion's headquarters. He's here. Hellwing has come. Earlier, Hellwing Castle grounds. Before this, within Makai, we find outside of Hellwing Castle both Naruto, Mito and Kushina appearing in pillars of hellfire. Just at the spot Naruto sensed the spike before feeling Naruki's signature completely vanish. As they appeared though, Naruto quickly caught Akemi lying on the ground, severely injured from what he could see. This was followed by both Kushina and Mito, who quickly rushed to her side. As they did, Naruto slowly surveyed the area only to make his suspicion all the more positive, resulting in him clenching his fist tighter and tighter by the second. Walking forward to huddled women did he look down at Akemi's fallen form. He eyed her and saw injuries only a holy one could give. Her left arm was cauterized, as was her whole back from what seemed a blade. Though when he saw Akemi crying and mumbling about Naruki did he pay close attention. I tried to stop him, but I couldn't, he overwhelmed me. I'm so sorry. I failed you. I couldn't protect her. I failed her. I'm sorry, Naruto-sama. She spoke undeterred of her words. As they were spoken, Mito and Kushina's eyes were wide at the revelation that is before the trickling of fear started to seep into them. That is before Naruto slowly, ever so slowly, kneeled down, the bangs of his spiky hair shadowing his eyes, giving him all the more of a eerily appearance. He slowly placed his hand on Akemi's forehead before speaking in a quiet manner that somewhat surprised both Mito and Kushina. Well, that is until they could hear the underlining tone of what made them both shiver, since it was the coldness of which could not be matched resonate with his voice. I see. Do not worry any longer, Akemi. Sleep, he said, and in some way despite her injuries Akemi's eyes suddenly started to close. As they finally closed, Naruto channeled his Yukai into his hand before closing his eyes. Murmuring a few words, did the devil speak. Kui yawned, mind read. Using this technique Naruto saw what Akemi saw, basically. Everything she saw he saw ever so recently. And what he saw confirmed his suspicions, so slowly releasing the technique did he stand up, his eyes still shadowed by the bangs of his golden hair. His fists clenched so tight the knuckles were bleached white as blood seemed to drip rapidly onto the ground. You did good, Akemi. Holding him off long enough to make him spike his power. Now rest, you deserve that much. With that, Naruto slightly turned his head in Mito and Kushina's direction to where he spoke. It would seem a certain legion and their captain need to learn something. Mito. Kushina, take Akemi in and start healing her. Those wounds are from a holy blade. If left alone too long it will poison her. Spoke Naruto, his tone cold and impassive as ever, but the two women could practically see the anger rolling off him in waves. Mito quickly hefted Akemi up in a bridal carry that as before. Kushina looked at her master and lord and spoke, already sensing what he was gonna do. She could see Naruki gone and that worried her oh so very much, but if there was one thing that she knew about Naruto it was that when you've taken what was his then you are plain out dead. Naruki was in as his daughter and thus taken his family was practically handing yourself to the Grim Reaper. She wouldn't plead him to bring her back no matter how much she wanted to just go with him herself, for she knew deep within her that he would do it. Even if he had to bring heaven down to do so. All she could do was utter a few words to him before rushing to the castle. Naruto-sama, good luck, she said, giving a quick bow before she turned around and started forward to the castle. Though when she said this the beautiful redhead never saw Naruto's small smirk at her words, which was soon replaced with a frown as his purple glowing eyes flashed vibrantly. Kushina. Don't worry, Naruki, we'll be just fine. Hearing those words brought a smile to her face, for even if he didn't mean to, his very words made her very heart and soul swell up in warmth and protection. Just hearing those words again made her smile grow all the more wide, to which she responded back. Her words quiet and soft, but he heard her perfectly clear. I know, after all, her father is coming to get her, go get him. Naruto-sama. Tte. Her words made him mentally raise an eyebrow, yet chose not to say anything but to give a small nod. With that, Kushina dashed toward the castle, intent to heal Akemi of her severe wounds. Feeling she was gone, Naruto inhaled before his eyes closed for only the brief of seconds. As he did, he was suddenly enveloped in a swirling mass of pure darkness that had the occasional streak of black lightning. Within that second, Naruto sunk into the swirling mass, eyes closed off, but his very body was outlined with a purple aura of some sort. It was like he was channeling something. If only heaven knew was coming. Present time heaven. Just like before, as those within the court of Kami could see from the palace of divinity, like all other residents in heaven, the giant swirling black mass of darkness and lightning circulated in front of the Tengoku no Kurusita Gundam HQ, Heavenly Crusader Legion headquarters. Black lightning surged the giant mass of darkness as it shadowed over most of heaven itself. Residents and soldiers alike looked up at the giant mass that just radiated bloodlust, yet so much power it was both astounding and terrifying at the same time. Seeing it spread further and further made some of the weak-willed angels just pass out right where they stood due to the immense pressure and Yukai just coming down like a storm. It was simply shocking, more so to the surprised and shocked deities. For beings of supreme power and control, something like this has never once occurred, for not a single demon from Makai had the power to come right into their very realm, but to actually bring down such power that made the weaker ones fall to their very knees. Though what no one saw was both Kami and Megami's small smirks as they both gazed at the both terrifying yet somewhat enticing whirlpool cloud of darkness. It made them ever so slightly shiver, but what would make the two supreme goddesses over life and death have such a reaction? It was because of the anxiety of what was to come. Then, without a single warning, a violet light could be seen in the middle of the swirling mass. It twinkled in a deadly light before it suddenly shot off like a missile, catching all of the deities' attention. They could only stare as the violet comet of light shot down onto the Crusader Legion. before anyone could utter a single word. Boom. The frontal building of the HQ exploded in a fiery blaze of hellfire from the sudden impact. Its explosion rocked even the palace walls itself as the shockwaves of the crash blew through all of the HQ's vicinity. That was not all, for lay burning on the ground were once crusaders of said attacked legion, burned by the very fires of hell itself. Soon, though, the building that exploded upon being hit exploded once more, only this time a giant pillar of hellfire shot up into heaven's skies, darkening it all the more. WW, what the hell is Hellwing doing? Has that fool truly lost his mind? Shouted the shocked, flabbergasted deity called Amatsu Mikabashi. Spoke his eyes wide as can be as he along with his fellow deities stared at the destruction that just happened before their very eyes. I agree. Has he truly become arrogant enough to attack head-on? I knew he was stupid, but to really come into our realm and have the audacity to make such an attack on us. I say we get rid of this pest right now. Spoke another deity, this one being Kojin, god of fire. Though he is said to be god of fire, his flames are not nearly as powerful as those of the goddess of the sun Amaterasu, whose very own flames could burn him into ashes in mere seconds. Megami rolled her eyes at their words, that is, until she looked at her sister, to which she saw Kami looking at the destruction happening before them with calm, serene, divine azure blue eyes. She suddenly spiked her powers when she saw other deities beginning to issue orders. Do not do anything. This is business between only the Crusader Legion and Hellwing Naruto. All I want right now is our soldiers to surround the Crusader HQ outer walls in case Hellwing does attack further from the area. Other than that, no one is to provoke him or attack him in any way. Spoke Kami, her power spike getting all of the deities to instantly freeze up. But upon hearing her words made them all go into shock, other than Megami, that is, being the one to speak. Tsukuyomi spoke with a shocked tone. But Kami-sama. What he's doing is a direct assault upon heaven and a declaration of war. You can't mean to say we're gonna let him go. Her words spoken, to which Kami let out a sigh. That may be true, but you all need to take into account that one, Hellwing has only come here for what is his and his alone that was wrongfully taken from him. 2. Is that Nora and the Crusader Legion as a whole has betrayed me, their leader. Such actions against me are given a punishment, but this being their second time doing so, their punishment is death. Thirdly, this is no declaration for war, as I said earlier. Hellwing is here to retrieve what was taken from him, and by all rights he will get it back with or without our interference, she said in a tone of commandance that made all of them have a cold chill run up their spine. Megami discreetly smiled at her fellow sister's words. What she said was the complete truth, and she knew both her and Kami did not want to send their troops to Naruto. For one, they'd be killed easily, and second, they didn't want to anger him further than he already is. Plus, we don't want him dead. That man is so interesting, she mentally thought. Now, as the deities replayed their leader's words, they suddenly came to an immediate halt when something came over them. Speaking up, did Raijin speak for all of his fellow deities? Kami-sama, at least tell me. What exactly was taken from Hellwing for him to do such a act against us? What in the three realms could make a devil from Makai of his stature come into heaven like he has and do so much destruction? What I'm trying to say is, what exactly was taken from him to cause so much chaos? He asked, summing up all of their thoughts. Kami's angelic face surprisingly formed into a more frown expression as her eyes took on a glint of something akin to anger of sorts, to which made a few of those that looked into her eyes flinch ever so much. Narrowing her eyes, Kami waved her hand, forming a spiritually made window of sorts that was showing what was directly happening at the Crusader Legion HQ. While doing so, she decided to answer Raijin's question. That fool Nora kidnapped one Uzumaki Naruki, took her from Hellwing and her mother. Not only that, but that fool broke the law. He has not only taken the slave of Hellwing, since the little child was branded by his mark when Hellwing originally branded Uzumaki Kushina, her mother. She was branded as well from within Kushina's womb. She gained the mark as well, giving her the very same status as her mother. But also, Nora, that fool, has taken Hellwing's daughter, and honestly, I don't blame him for doing what he's doing right now. And with that the Kami and Megami watched on, ignoring the utterly shocked deities before them. Their eyes were planted on the window that showed was happening right now, and if one were to look close they would see the interest brimming in their eyes. Heaven Crusader Legion HQ. Within the once honored and famed HQ of Heaven's strongest military force known in all the three realms. A place that was once renowned for its making of the strongest crusaders ever to be seen before. A place of such praise by the very deities themselves that made it famed to be the strongest academy for crusaders. Now it was in total chaos and disorder, dishonored and stripped of their ranks, and the HQ up in flames. Destruction all around the area made the younger ones flee in terror as the veterans charged into battle. The very skies above them were not the normal heavenly blue like before, but were now a dark crimson streaked with blackness from the rising smoke of the destroyed building and burning bodies. At the frontal building of said HQ could we find it nothing more than completely destroyed, now replaced with a giant crater the size of which was impossible to measure. The outer rim of said crater had the flames of hell dancing around the circular disfigurement in the ground. Bodies of veteran crusaders laid on the ground burning and screaming bloody murder as their very skin and organs burned to ashes as their blood boiled to such extreme temperatures. Some were long dead, showing only a hellfire-engulfed skeleton, or others were rolling around trying to put out the flames that could not be quenched. Their screams made the surrounding crusaders flinch at their comrades' pain and agony, yet they all paid attention at what was in the middle of this crater of death and destruction. For within this crater, as the smoke from the impact disappeared, did it show the kneeling form of one Hellwing Naruto. His form was slowly rising. The flames of hell slowly circled around him like they were responding to their master. Slowly standing up to his full height did the said devil slowly look up from the crater he was in and into the faces of the crusaders surrounding him completely. Though when the first crusader saw his eyes through his spiny golden bangs did the man start to shake uncontrollably, as did many others when they met the gaze of said devil. For what could be seen was his demonic pair of violet pupil eyes filled with no other than a sinister violet shade that could only be described as the ultimate bloodlust, for in both eyes was a demonic slit of sorts that seemed to penetrate the souls of all that looked into his very demonic orbs. Slowly walking forward did Naruto speak only one word that sent every single crusader into disarray and charge at him like a stampede of raging yet desperate bulls. Die. Crusader HQ Main Temple. As the sounds of screams and explosions could be heard that shook every temple in the HQ, could there be seen in the main building an uncountable number of veteran crusaders armed to the teeth. There was so many that filled the room that as could be noted that as was all of the said veteran crusaders. All were armed and ready, facing a giant threshold that stood attached to the walls. It stood tall and imposing, with it being 10 feet high and 10 feet in width. It made out of some kind of metal. But it sure did look impenetrable. Upon these countless crusaders stood in the very middle of them all was what could be seen as the leader of them all. The captain of the Crusader Legion, the once honored and famed military force and right hand of Kami herself. The man named Nora stood armored and all weapon held in hand, while the other had the struggling child of one Uzumaki Naruki by the collar of her shirt. "Let me go, you big jerk. You hurt Akemi-chan. You're in so much trouble when my mama gets here," shouted the struggling yet teary-eyed Naruki. Her kitsune ears flapped and twitched angrily as her tail waved around frantically. She tried greatly to get out of Nora's grasp, but to no avail, from both his strength and height far outweighed her own. Though she did sense the many explosions and screams and tremors from outside this big place, and the weird feeling that made her feel like she knew this feeling from somewhere before. And somehow it made her unlike the crusaders that were shivering in the armor, both warm and protected. She thought it was Kushina that was coming for her, since she thought Naruto as the big meanie. Nora, the man just grunted. "Shush, child, you've been tainted by that meddling little bastard Hellwing. You're the chosen one of Kami-sama, and I will not have you be churned into that unholy one's clutches to make you his weapon," spat the once honorary crusader leader. Now when Naruki heard this, she had blinked confusingly as the man's words made her confused. Nora had said the big meanie was churning her. Yet he had not trained her in the least, due to the training being too lethal to her health and very being. Now she may be a very young child, but she wasn't stupid. As she clashed the two sayings, she finally came to a realization that made her frown. At Nora. This jerk is lying. Naruto told me that training me now is too dangerous. This guy is lying. Nora Taicho. He's broken through the third barricade. Shouted a crusader who had just flown in through the ceiling, his armor broken and burnt in many places. Part of his wings were burnt but looked to have been torn off from further burnings. But the glaring thing was that his left arm looked to have been torn completely off. It made Nora and some crusaders seeing his injury frown. Naruki perked up when she heard the man's words, especially when he said, he, instead of, she. It made her think on exactly who was coming if it wasn't her beloved Ka-chan. That is until her kitsune ears twitched before perking up suddenly when she suddenly sensed that something closing in fast. Very fast. Who is that? And why does this familiar feeling come to me when I sense that something, thought the confused Naruki. Nora's eyes, though, upon hearing his soldier's words, widened slightly, and before anyone could even utter a word or make a single action. Clang. The sound of metal bending and pounding reverberated the area. Everyone's attention was quickly focused upon the giant threshold of a door that now had an imprint of something akin to a fist of some sort. Even Naruki was focused upon this with a slight amount of awe and growing curiosity of who was exactly behind that door. Clang. Another fist imprint hit the door, making it tremble and bend as the walls cracked with ever-resounding boom from the metal giant door. Suddenly Nora yelled out, "He's coming! Brandish your weapons, men! We will not allow this unholy creature take the chosen one back into his evil clutches." His shout echoed all around the room. Hurrah! The sound of sword drawing sounded as every crusader that was within the proverbial sea of crusaders held out their own weapon of choice. As did Nora when he channeled his holy energy into his blade, making it be engulfed in some type of white aura of sorts. Clang, 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 clang. 4 more resounding bangs on the giant threshold sounded once more, with 4 more imprints embedded within. Each one making it separate from being closed off from the outside to now being slightly open. Now upon the 4th clang everyone could see the door's middle was slightly open to the outside world. But what next appeared though shook everyone to their very core. But Naruki, when she saw the same as the others, she wasn't scared nor terrified, but instead she felt herself be engulfed in a sense of both familiarity and warmth of the utmost degree that it sent a shiver down her spine. A chill that made her smile for some reason that she did not understand, yet didn't question it, for she was stuck in a growing awe of sorts. Now what exactly was in this split of the once thought impenetrable threshold was the darkened violet slitted eyes of one very pissed devil. It only happened but in just that 1 second alone from the protections the Crusaders and Nora thought they had did they now find themselves utterly and completely wrong. You think this little door can hold me back? Fools. They weren't prepared for what happened next, for suddenly the dented beyond all repair slabs of giant steel were suddenly blown open and off the walls they were hinged from. Of course the doors flew right into the Crusaders, to which some had the unfortunate luck of being hit by the slabs of metal, resulting in them becoming nothing more than a bloody smear on the floor. As this happened, the smoke from the doors having been blown off started to clear up. As it did so, the sound of footsteps could be heard. Yet not a sound other than this could be heard. Many of the Crusaders were still in shock at what just happened to their strongest door be blown away like nothing, and the death of their fellow Crusaders. Them dying in such a way, they didn't die fighting but died by being smashed like a pumpkin from a door. Though through it all the little Naruki, being held by the collar of her shirt, was gazing at the shadowed figure walking ran closer. His very footsteps somehow echoed in the eerily silent HQ temple area. As the shadowed figure could be seen getting closer and closer with the smoke clearing up, did Naruki's eyes widen and Nora's own narrow in both disgust and hatred. For when the smoke fully cleared did the figure known as Hellwing Naruto be seen, he walking ever so calmly to Nora and Naruki, his eyes trained only on Naruki alone, neither caring for the countless armed Crusaders before him. His demonic gaze lingered on Naruki for a brief moment until they settled on Nora, to where they showed the utter coldness only Naruto could produce. His hands at his sides, his facial expression impassive as ever, but those that could see within his eyes would see the cold fury beneath his cold demonic slitted visage. As he walked closer and closer to both Nora and the Crusaders, he didn't show a hint of surprise when suddenly two Crusaders appeared his sides in mid-swing of their weapons. Even when the blades were about an inch from his head did he show not a single emotion. He ignored Naruki's shocked and worried expression or smug one from Nora's, thinking he was gonna be killed. Wrong, for suddenly, Naruto appeared behind the Crusaders and still kept walking toward Nora, leaving behind the two Crusaders looking at his back in something akin to both shock and, strangely enough, pain. Then a second later both Crusaders' head just exploded in a gory mess, brain matter, bone, and blood showering the air before raining down on the ground, and Crusaders alike. Their headless bodies slowly fell forward, resulting in both hitting the floor dead, all the same resulting in more blood painting the ground. Yet without a glance or hesitation Naruto didn't stop, nor did he turn his demonic gaze from Nora's face. The devil didn't care for those around him, all he did care about was his target and target alone. The one who dared to take what was his. He was gonna get it back. This foolish little fallen Crusader will pay for his transgression. And he will pay with his death. As he walked toward them, Naruto narrowed his violet-slitted eyes on Nora. That's all the Crusader saw, Naruto's demonic violet-slitted gaze, before he felt an immeasurable agonizing pain erupt in his stomach, that as before something grasped his face hard, before whatever had him by his face started to squeeze his face hard, making him let out a grunt of pain. Due to this, Nora was not able to see, unlike everyone else who was able to see what was happening before them. With Naruki we could find her held in the free left arm of Naruto, her eyes though wide as can be as she was held protectively by Naruto. His very aura made any all tension she had fade away before unintentionally snuggling further into him. She could feel a warmth of some kind exuding from him that made her feel all the more safe from any and all danger outside his grasp. Her purple orbs were staring up in total shock, yet a growing awe at the scene happening before her. Right before her eyes was the one person she saw as the big meanie, or scary man, was now standing tall and imposing, holding up Nora by his face while lifting him up ever so slowly. She noticed Naruto had not glanced her during this, for his gaze was shadowed by the bangs of his hair as he did this. Honestly, the child was trying to think all possible reasons as to why this man was here. She would get her answer with his next action, though, as before her very eyes did she see Naruto lift the struggling Nora of the ground inch by agonizing inch as his fingers dug into his face ever so slowly, making Nora scream, to which was muffled by his offender's palm. "You foolish little angel, think you can get away for your action against me? Coming in Makai and taking what did not belong to you, for this you shall die, not only for taking what was mine but also giving you a death befitting for someone who thought to be able to kill me with such a lowly trap such as this," spoke Naruto in a very calm tone that had the hidden coldness of 1,000 glaciers within. All he got in response was Nora screaming all the more, which was muffled by his palm. He however didn't stop his increasing grip on the Crusader's face and forehead. He gripped even harder, resulting in a loud crack. The sound of bone cracking sounded as Nora let out an anguished muffled scream of immense pain as his forehead now cracked under the tremendous pressure of Naruto's ever iron increasing grip. Slowly blood started to seep not only out of Nora's nose but also his very eyes and ears. Due to such extreme pressure being put on him, the blood gathered up in his head was trying to find a way out. And it was ever so slowly. MFFFHGGHGH. Was the muffled Nora trying to speak, only to scream all the more when Naruto squeezed tighter, cracking and shattering most of his teeth. He didn't stop there though as Naruto spoke. "This is your end, you pathetic piece of filth. You who dared take what was mine and not think of the consequences deserves this death. Now pay for your actions against me and my slave's person." Akuma Maho. Fuai demon magic. Rot. And just like its namesake, Nora's body was suddenly enveloped by Naruto's hand by a sickening deep brown color which slowly seeped into Nora's body. A second later, until Nora's eyes suddenly snapped open until his screams could be heard even through Naruto's hand, he was struggling all the more with a painful agonizing vigor. yet proved fruitless as suddenly his left arm fell right off his shoulder and hitting the ground, it leaving a poisonous green smoke from the arm and shoulder. Then like that his right arm slid right off next, as did his eyeballs, literally rolling out of their sockets as his hair literally fell out of his head. His legs had fallen to the ground as well, leaving him nothing more than a rotting torso and waist. Naruto let out a small frown of disgust when he felt the blood of the dying angel held in his grasp flood his palm and leak off his hand. Disgusting, and with but a swing of his hand he sent the rotting angel away from him before pointing his palm toward Nora, making it crackle with black lightning before a orb of darkness formed in his palm. Die, worm! Then the orb suddenly shot off from his palm, it hurtled toward Nora, and when it hit him it exploded, completely decimating him utterly and completely, along with a few hundred crusaders. They didn't stand a chance from the orb of darkness and destruction, taking them out and part of the temple walls. Seeing the fool dead, Naruto slowly looked around him to see the now shocked yet enraged crusaders surrounding him. Not a single way out for him and Naruki, or so thought the crusaders thought. For slowly Naruto glanced down at the little girl held in his arm, and upon seeing her wide shocked purple eyes did he give her a sign of acknowledgement. Child, hold on to me, for this is about to get very wild and very bloody real fast. Now when the little devil Kitsune hybrid heard this, she didn't waste a minute before she did as she asked, grasping onto him, did she wait and watch for what was to come. Seeing as she did as told, Naruto moved his gaze from her to the crusaders surrounding him. He didn't waste a second when he let out all of his titanic power, come crashing down all of those within the Crusader Temple and HQ altogether. An unbearable pressure had crashed down all of the Crusaders as Naruto's form suddenly exploded, with both the fires of hell wrapping around him as the tendrils of pure sickening darkness waved around him. The very ground cracked as the very area started to tremble, making many stumble in shock from the shaking. Even outside of the attacked KQ with the surrounding of said area was the other divine legions had to hold their ground as the ground beneath them started to shift uncontrollably. If one were to look up into the very skies of heaven, they'd see it being pitch black with the occasional crimson and purple lightning. It was like an earthquake had come forth in heaven's main dominion, and it was getting stronger and stronger each second. The only safe place was the temple of the deities, and even it was started to crack bit by the power coming forth. It was like a damned monsoon was coming down on them all, about to crush them all and take them away to their death. Watching this within the palace, the deities from all realms could only watch in utter shock at what was happening before their very eyes. The sudden spike of power caught them off guard, yes, but with it rapidly increasing to levels they thought was impossible even for the famed devil race of Makai. But right now, before their eyes showed Hellwing Naruto, standing there killing Nora, now holding the child taken from him, with the Makai elements of darkness and hellfire circling around him as if he was their master. His golden spiky hair seemed to shift and sway in the chaotic winds of his ungodly power, making him all the more fierce and fearful in the eyes of those that were below his power. Even some of the low-level deities were shaking when his power increased all the more. As they watched Naruto from the spiritual made window made by Kami, his power breaking every boundary they thought was possible, they never saw the excited eyes of both Kami nor Megumi looking upon Naruto's form. They both looked upon him, seeing his power increasing further than thought possible even to them, and that was what excited them, a being of such lineage and power that not even they knew existed until now. Hellwing Naruto was most certainly a very interesting being to the two goddesses, and they were inwardly adamant to know more of him than they already knew. Truly his power now increasing caused their very palace to shake, and if not for them and the other deities' presence within, it would have most assuredly fallen into nothing more than rubble beneath Hellwing's power coming down on it. They could all watch, as Naruto's body started to glow, a mix of three shades, them being a dark violet, a bloody crimson, and a void-less shade black. The elements of hellfire seemed to circulate around him, as did the tendrils of darkness combining into one, resulting in a giant pillar. With Naruto, as the pillar came around him, it mixed with the fires of hell and darkness. Did he not notice the changes happening to him as he let himself transform into his true form? The one he used back during Naruki's very birth, the form that shocked even the goddess of death herself, Megumi. The form that will now shake heaven to its very foundations and shift it in a state of pure chaos. As he immersed himself in his form, would he be surprised at the changes to his form and how this event would change the watching wide-eyed Naruki who beheld him from within the pillar of fire and darkness in a gaze of pure awe. Her eyes twinkling as she beheld the changing form of the man that saved her life and changed it all for the better. Her eyes gazed with a look only a child her age could give at seeing something so amazing. Whoa, was all Naruki could think as she watched the man that held her change before her very eyes, into something that made her eyes get wider and wider with each passing second. Now on the outside of this giant pillar of mixed energies, it tearing through the devastated temple and piercing the very skies of heaven, made it be seen by all of heaven as it lit up like a blazing torch in the darkest of nights. But those that thought the shaking would stop or ease up were dead wrong, for suddenly it got even worse when Naruto's power suddenly spiked even higher than ever before, making a proverbial rip appear in the sky. Even Kami and Megami's eyes had widened when they felt Naruto's power go beyond what they thought it ever could, reaching levels that both excited them and disturbed their fellow deities. That is before, right there in the HQ of the Crusader Legion of Heaven, did the pillar coming out of it suddenly expand inch by inch, decimating all in its path. That is before it stopped, before it suddenly all went down into the ruined temple. Then again, this was all the calm before the storm, as the saying goes. And they were all right. Megami let out a small grin before whispering to her sister, "Now Kami ne-chan, watch, it's about to get real good," she said to Kami, who watched on, her eyes set in place at what was happening before her. At the temple, deep within its first floor, could we find the Crusaders all surrounding a crater that had been formed by the giant pillar that was but a moment ago piercing their very sky. As they all looked deep within, did they see a shadowed figure in the smoke that which couldn't be seen. That is until the smoke suddenly was blown away, revealing a newly changed Hellwing Naruto. And by Izanagi himself, what a change he undergone. For now, standing in the crater that made every single Crusader on that floor shake in pure unadulterated fear, did they see the fully transformed of the man that had annihilated over half of their veterans on the night of Naruki's birth. Only this time they could see changes upon him that sent many weak-willed ones to their knees in sheer terror. It was understandable really, for before their very eyes was the same 7-foot pitch-black knight of Hellwing Naruto in his true and all-powerful form. Only changes could be seen that was no there from all those years ago that was not there before. These changes being that his golden violet-tipped hair could be seen flowing down his back in a wild spiky mane. His demonic armor overall had even more spikes coming out, while also his demonic claws were all the more defined than before, as were the spikes jutting out of his elbows and kneecaps. Both being a foot long and glinting in what little light that was shown. That was not all, for his demonic helmet did it seem to have fused with his face somewhat, since his demonic glowing eyes seemed all the more stronger than before, a power long thought gone and so ancient seemed to glow within his eyes that mixed with his now cold fury that he held. Though on the lower part of the helmet was the one thing that truly scared most of the Crusaders and disturbed most of the observing deities. It seemed as Naruto's jaw and teeth melded with the helmet, giving him all the more nightmarish image, for when Naruto's mouth opened in a slight grin did it show his giant razor-sharp maw of green fangs. Every tooth was a giant fang that could tear and shred through all. What was even more disturbing was the smoke coming out of his mouth and nostrils. Then as Naruto stepped out did his final changes make their appearance, them being both his wings and tail. Or should I say tails? For now his once 6-foot demonic tail was it now occupied by a similar tail looking just like the other scales, spikes and all, only both bigger in length, reaching 7 feet now. While on his back where his pitch-black angel wings was there now another pair of wings below the first pair, them being the same shade and shape as the first, but with all 4 wingers 14 feet in length, thus they stretched outward, touching the ends of his self-made crater. As he took another step, the demonic entity of power and bloodlust slowly looked down, ignoring all those around him. When he looked, held firmly yet protectively in his left arm was the once again wide-eyed Naruki, who was looking back into his eyes, her light purple orbs meeting dark violet slitted ones. That is before Naruki saw something in his eyes that made her feel the most extreme comfort that only someone of a parent could give. No, a father could give to their child. She suddenly snuggled further into him, ignoring his cold metallized body, just embracing the warmth he somehow gave off, that which slowly filled her very being. Letting out a slight mewl, did Naruki mutter out something that which Naruto did hear yet chose not to respond. Papa. Naruto eyed the child before he closed his eyes. Slowly he started to float off the ground and out of the crater. He reached the flat ground to where Crusaders gave him a wide berth before surrounding his demonic form once again. He ignored all those around him as he gazed at the child in his arms. A feeling of something swelled up within him as he held the little hybrid child in his arm. What that was he did not know, and it made him frown from within his helmet. That is before foolishly 5 Crusaders quickly attacked him from all sides, aiming toward him, 2 swinging their blades at him and 3 others chanting spells to blast him. Naruto's eyes widened, though before they narrowed, and in but a flash of silver, those 5 Crusaders found themselves without a head. The sound of decapitated angels fell to the ground as Naruto stood there, his right arm stretched outward holding his signature blood-forged Nodashi, only this time, like himself, did his weapon change. It looked the same as before, only slight differences. The guard changed from a demon's maw into 4 devil horns facing the opposite direction from each other. A scale of some sort traveled a bit up the blade as the demonic red runes within seemed to have melted and melded with his obsidian blade, giving it a hue of bloody crimson. The pommel of his Nodashi was spiked as well. The chain was still there, only longer than before, about 2 feet in length, with strangely a demonic horned skull of sorts dangling at the end. A small grin planted on its face as its empty eye sockets seemed to glow red like a twinkling flicker of sorts, but it was there. The length of his newly changed blade was 8 feet in length, thus giving it more reach and more destructive power. Looking upon his newly changed blade, did Naruto just give a small nod of approval before he slowly turned his head at the enemies around him. Gripping Mokushiroku, Apocalypse, making it burst forth with the fires of hell and darkness enveloping it, did he speak in a tone that showed just how angry this enraged devil truly was. You little brats will pay the price for angering me, and taking my child from me. Feel the wrath of a wrathful Akuma. And with but a second did Naruto disappear, only to appear behind a group of several hundred Crusaders. In that split second, though, all those Crusaders suddenly erupted in multiple spouts of blood, gore, flesh and bone. Their organs flying through the air and falling to the ground, as did multiple dead bodies of the dead Crusaders. But he did not stop there. Channeling darkness and hellfire into his blade, did Naruto rear back before appearing in front of another few hundred Crusaders. His blade flaming with the mixed elements of hellfire and darkness, did he unleash his attack. Jigoku Piasa, Hell Piercer, and with not a second to spare, a giant blade-like attack shot off from Naruto's blade after swinging it, being after the merging a dark shade of violet, now it cutting down every Crusader in its trajectory. After this, Naruto channeled hellfire into his blade, making it burst forth as if it were alive before speaking. Yoyukato, melting cut, and like its namesake, when Naruto teleported behind a group of charging Crusaders, did the attack do its job perfectly, for when Naruto swung, the fires of amplified hell cut through them, melting them on the spot in not a second, for they just fell dead, melting right there. Looking over his shoulder, Naruto pointed his blade toward a charging enraged Crusaders, the sharp point of his blade straight at them before ushering his next attack as the element of darkness enshrouded his obsidian blade. Yami no Hakai, darkness destruction, and like that a highly condensed beam of darkness shot off from Apocalypse before hitting the group of Crusaders. Boom! There went the group of Crusaders, who just walked right to their death in a blaze of death and destruction, as did half of their once honored, now ruined temple. The gaping hole from the attack showed half of said temple was decimated, along with the Crusaders caught in the attack's range. As Naruto ignored their pleas and begs for mercy as he continued his attack on them, he never did see Naruki's gaze on him. Her purple eyes gazed upon his form as he fought and killed all in his path. Without a hint of remorse nor regret, she wasn't disturbed by the mass death or blood around her. If anything, she was getting used to it and found it strangely exciting to see such things. But the things she was seeing now, The attacks, the fighting Naruto was doing, slaughtering all in his path, but a swing of his newly changed blade showed her that Naruto was much stronger than anyone thought. Looking upon him, all Naruki could do was smile happily before nuzzling him, his form, a few tears escaping her eyes. Smiling happily did she speak, ignoring the fight, death going on around her. "Otu-sama," she uttered. Oblivious to Naruki's word, did Naruto decapitate a crusader, before he looked over his shoulder to see a group of them coming, so grasping his blade in a spear-like fashion did he hurl it at them, thus resulting in 10 of them all being stabbed through before they hit the wall, stabbed through like a shish kebab. Then using his free hand, Naruto channeled darkness before facing it outward at the majority of the crusaders, them being over 10,000 in number, before speaking. Kurayami no Bore, darkness volley. Suddenly orbs of darkness rapidly shot out of Naruto's free hand, each hitting the crusaders, resulting in multiple explosions which rocked the very temple all the more as part of the explosions destroyed more of its main walls and part of its roof caving in. Suddenly a shadow appeared over him, resulting in Naruki to look up only for her eyes to widen. She closed her eyes, shouting out to Naruto, "Papa! Behind you!" Hearing her scream, did Naruto turn around only to see something that made his eyes flare in anger. A crusader had shot a spell at him, most of it missing him, but some of it had hit him, but more specifically it hit Naruki. It was only a scratch, but just seeing her hurt, her bleeding made his senses go haywire. Baring his teeth did he shift his gaze at the nervously sweating crusader. With not time to react, Naruto was on him, his free hand grasping his neck in a vice-like grip. Snarling at the fool, he opened his giant maw of teeth before biting onto the crusader's head. He didn't hesitate as he violently shook his head, jerking the crusader's head violently in so many directions. That is until with a final tug, rip, did the crusader's head come off, blood spurting out everywhere as Naruto had the man's severed head in his jaw, that is before he threw it into the air before opening his jaw even more, resulting in the man's head falling right into his mouth before he closed his mouth. Crunch. With a good loud crunch of bone breaking, flesh tearing, blood spurting did the head inside Naruto's mouth be crunched down by his devil mawful fangs. Blood dribbled down his mouth as he chewed on the head before allowing a big gulp, swallowing the chewed up head down before scowling. "Meh, orcs' heads taste better," he said before spitting out an eyeball of said crusader. While he did so, he ignored the horrified, disgusted looks from the remaining crusaders or the shocked yet excited expression on Naruki's face when she saw what he just did. To her, that was the most awesome thing she has ever seen, second only to him killing and slaughtering the mean people around them. Spitting out teeth and remaining bone, did Naruto suddenly look down at Naruki to see her injury, only to see it closed up due to both her healing regeneration and his overwhelming presence destroying the holy power in the injury. Narrowing his eyes did he glare through his helmet at the remaining crusaders. Stretching his hand outward did he speak in his demonic tone. "This is the end for you all. Die knowing this wouldn't have happened had you not followed your foolish leader. Biguban Hakai Yami no Bakuden, Big Bang Destruction Darkness Bomb," thus gathering darkness in the palm of his hand before blasting it forward, resulting in a big explosion. A very big explosion. Seeing the rest of them gone, either decimated by the attack or something burning alive, he mentally called his blade back, making it disappear before reappearing in his hand. After which vanished from his hand. After which did he shift Naruki a little bit in his demonic metallized arms. Did Naruto slowly look in a direction and glare. "I know you're watching, Kami, and let this be a warning. If anything, and I do mean anything, like this happens again, I'll come back and make this look like child's play when I'm through with the next person that angers me. Till then, watch yourselves. Deities." With that, Naruto let his transformation go, making his be enveloped in a pillar of darkness and hellfire before it disappeared, showing him back in his normal form. Not a change was on him, but the power coming from him all the more stronger than ever before. With that, he shifted Naruki a bit in his arms as he walked through a portal of darkness, with it closing up behind him. Heaven Court of Kami. Silence was all that could be known in the Court of Kami, As every single deity watched Naruto, the devil of Makai decimate the once honorary Crusader Legion into nothing more but multiple dead corpses, with the main HQ being nothing more but completely ruined. Every deity was still reeling in shock what just happened, while both Kami and Megumi fought down a smile at the events that just played out before them. All they could do was keep watching over Hellwing from now and make sure they keep a tighter leash on their soldiers lest something like this happens again. Though they couldn't themselves but let a shiver go down their spines when they remembered Naruto's last message to them, his overbearing violet-slitted eyes glaring at them from within his demonic helmet of his devil form made them tingle with so much excitement they would have smiled if not for the tense situation. Hellwing Naruto, you just keep blowing every expectation I see for you, you're such a interesting being, that we both can't hope to see grow further and further, was the identical thoughts of both Kami and Megumi. Makai Hellwing Castle. Upon stepping out of the portal of darkness, did Naruto come walking out holding the sleeping soundly Naruki in his left arm. His face impassive as ever, but his eyes did hold a somewhat content look when they glanced down at the sleeping child. It felt odd when he held the child, him a devil of such hatred, coldness and power that it was nigh unthinkable for him to be holding such a child. It made him slightly frown due to the alien feelings he was having, but when he felt the rushing signatures he knew all too well did he just hold them down. For now, Naruto-sama, you're back, was the collective shout of three females. Looking up did he see Mito, Kushina and the newly healed Akemi standing before him. He looked at all three of them before giving a small nod, that is before Naruki made a small noise making Kushina snap her gaze at her before she looked up at him with wide eyes. Seeing this he slowly gave Naruki to her. There you go Kushina, the child is safe, he said as the red-headed beauty took her child back into her arms. Her eyes swelled up in glistening tears as her shoulders shook before she slowly embraced her child. Her little baby girl. Thank you so much Naruto-kun, she said, not knowing of the change in suffix. She then did something that made both Mito and Akemi's eyes widen and Naruto to stand in slight surprise when she stood up and kissed his cheek before walking away back to the castle to get her little girl in bed. Naruto just stood there, his eyes wide as can be, as both Mito and Akemi stood looking at the scene in shock, more so Mito. That is before she mentally smiled at the action and just hoped her master was alright with such an action. Grasping Akemi, she bowed as did Akemi before they both walked back to the castle. Standing there did Naruto slowly place his hand where Kushina pecked him on the cheek, that is before he frowned in confusion from the feelings coming back with full force, the feelings he had back then coming back as well. This made him frown further before he literally stomped down on them once again, squashing these feelings within him. Looking at his castle did he take a step forward while letting out a sigh. Why do I feel the future years are gonna be hectic? He had no idea. 7 years later. It's been a total of 7 years that's passed within Makai, ever since the kidnapping of Naruki and Naruto getting her back after annihilating one of Heaven's legionary forces. Ever since then things have gone back to normal, except for a few things. Naruto of course had gone back to training the three women, of that being Mito, Kushina and Akemi. Since then, Naruto has made sure to push the three girls' training farther and farther to make them stronger with each passing day. And it has worked. Through blood, sweat and tears did the three women get majorly stronger through his methods. They all showed improvement in their own fields and in their weaknesses. He had them improve on their weak points and strengthen them as to not have them known by the enemy. Akemi, the former Biju, has showed more improvement of all, though due to all the harsh training Naruto put her through, added with the training trips he took each girl on for weeks on end. On her trip she was put through a second hell. Naruto had her fighting demons that equaled in power with the first Kyuubi, or some rare cases demons that were stronger than the first Kyuubi. But through all of it she proved herself time and time again, defeating each demon. She didn't come unscathed, though proving each battle was challenging, almost near death with a few. But through each battle she got stronger and wiser for both herself and her prowess in combat. She was able to train further and longer though, and was able to become stronger doing so, becoming stronger than the first Kyuubi long ago. But there was one event that almost had her killed if not for her master stopping it in time. Ever since this event, Akemi had become a bit closer to the man that had given her a second chance, close enough to him she would admit she had feelings for the devil. Yet being afraid to admit them was she caught red-handed by both Mito and Kushina, who surprisingly enough to her welcomed her and helped her through her state of self-depression. Through these trips he took the girls on that could last for weeks on end. When he took one woman he had the other two training themselves harder than ever before. If it was either Mito or Kushina, he had the two girls prove themselves to him and part of their training to raid and destroy one of Lucifer or Yami's fortresses, destroying them and the leader of each fortress. This worked in two ways. The first was that is trained both Uzumakis in the harshest conditions, and that was a one-person war against an army of demons of high power and take down their main stronghold. While the second was it delayed both Lucifer and Yami's expanding their territory, and having major losses for the both of them made it all the more sweeter. So through it all, Naruto put the three women through everything and back for the last 7 years, making them stronger, honing their skills and reflexes. Naruto was putting them through it all to make them able to defend themselves from any and all demons. There was also something interesting that happened, for when Makai knew of Naruto gaining another slave and a daughter, at that they started to become all the more chaotic. Hounding both Mito and Kushina got worse, and residents of Makai treated Akemi coldly. While not as bad as Naruki was treated in Ningenkai, she was still treated badly due to her being a Biju and them having such a reputation that has shamed Makai for so very long. It came to a point where Naruto received a letter from a demon named Ragnori who had a personal grudge against the first Kyuubi for killing his mate and children and mate, and has held an immense hatred for the Kyuubi and Biju as one. Thus this demon lord had spoke if he were to hand over Akemi he would give him several forbidden spell books and 6 of his best slaves. Now normally if Naruto was the same one from his past he would have accepted just for the demon to shut up, but now he did something else. He had Akemi, who was terrified after reading the letter, place a few forbidden kitsune curses upon the letter that would give Ragnori a very unpleasant surprise. This action made Akemi all the more sure she had fallen for him all over again, for he was willing to keep her despite her past history as a former Biju, now Kitsune demon. Her love and affection for him grew by leaps and bounds when this event happened, that it took everything she had to not just kiss him right there on the spot for keeping her. So instead she just kept the urge down and just smiled ever so happily at him, thanking him profusely, to which he just waved her off. More things have happened though in the last 7 years, like Naruto himself. After slaughtering the Crusaders and decimating their HQ, he had undergone a shift in power where he could sense it had spiked up in a level that surprised even him. It was so powerful that he himself had to go training even harder to control his newfound power as to not lose himself in a bloodlust craze. But there was one thing that has changed the most out of them all, and that was the once little child named Uzumaki Naruki, who from the tender age of 5 had developed into a healthy young hybrid girl of the age of 12. Over the course of these past 7 years did the once defenseless little girl become a pre-teen that took any and all training she got very seriously. Yes, that's correct, for when Naruki had become the age of 12, Naruto took to his word and gave her training, but nothing like he gave Mito, Kushina or Akemi for that matter. She was still too young to train in what he gives the older women, for if he did that, training would tear her apart due to how young she was. That was why he started her on something slow and easy for her to get used to for the training he'd give her in the future years. This being for her to start controlling her yokai and honing her physical prowess, meaning increasing her strength, speed, reflexes, and senses as best she could alone. The young Uzumaki, though throughout the 7 years has not changed, she was still the hot-tempered little girl that her mother, and her other 2 surrogate family members Akemi Nei-chan and Mito Oba-chan all loved and adored. But if there was one thing that has changed for her, that was her relationship with Naruto. Ever since he saved her from the Crusaders did she see him in a totally different light. This different light was what Makai has now thought to Naruki being so important to Hellwing for him to do something so shocking. She saw him as her papa, her beloved father, the man she treasured as much as her lovely Ka-chan. Her ever so precious Otu-sama, her view of him was of her seeing him as both her father and master, but mostly as a father. He had kept her safe, raised her through the years. It was only natural she would see him as such. She adored him utterly and completely devoted to him. She took her training so seriously as to impress him in ways that only an intellectual child could think of. This brought her into a somewhat of a limelight, portrayed as the adopted daughter of Hellwing Naruto, the supreme devil of Makai, and strongest demon titan in all of history. She was wanted by demons all over for her beautiful appearance and heritage, that being her a first ever hybrid of kitsune and devil mix. But through it all, Naruki denied them as to further show she didn't care for any of those bastard demons by beating each and every one of those lust-filled demons into the ground before killing them. She did this, and on one day beating up a few of these demons did she receive a very rare sign of affection from her surrogate father, when he pat her head. Now this would seem normal between a father and their child, but to Naruki it was a lot more. A wholelo more. What was a normal sign of affection for normal bonds between a father and his child was like something akin to a trip to Cloud 9. For when his hand is placed her head does she freeze up before she felt the immeasurable feelings come forth from her. Her very soul and being filled with warmth at his very touch, eliciting a smile from the 12-year-old. Other signs would be with her kitsune ears and tail stiffening at his touch before, shockingly enough to her immense embarrassment, unleashed pheromones from her very being as she would think of a very passionate moment between her and her beloved papa. Though before it could get any further, Naruto would release his hand, making her let out a whimper of need and despair of losing his ever so warm touch. Of course, once she was caught, she would have blushed so dark when she saw him staring at her situation, making her wish she could crawl into a hole and just die there. So you could see little Naruki-chan had quite the interesting relationship for her papa. Of course, this also put Naruto up even higher in Makai as to have not only gained a slave out of the strongest Biju named Akemi but also a daughter of all things. Thus leading him with more political shit from other demons. Though it didn't make a difference, it did get on his nerves to where he'd go to that demon's household and annihilate them on the spot for just annoying him. But there has been things that has happened to Naruto mentally that he's kept from everyone, for he himself didn't know exactly what it was but was starting to slowly realize that it had something to do with spending time with all of the females in his life. Other than this though, not much has changed, and so we move on to our favorite band of demons and our favorite devil in a particular little place in Makai. Circles of Makai. Ninth Circle, Treachery. Deep within the legendary Jigoku no Sakuru, circles of hell, could we find in the last circle of hell called Treachery our group of 5 deep within. They had come to this due to Naruto's expense for both a training trip and a personal expedition for his own use. They didn't question him, since this was a training trip for the 3 women and a new experience for the 12-year-old Naruki. They had come into the circles of Makai early on and since then been traversing it with the deadly trio of Mito, Kushina and Akemi, fighting guardians and demonic beings within that gave them all a run for their money when they were still fighting together. They fought against demons and guardians that have only been told in legend or explained to them by Naruto himself. Demons like Agramon, the demon of fear and of nightmares, the living embodiment that is fear. Another demon by the name of Alistair, the executioner of sinners, the demon of legend said to have fought in the second war against heaven. The third demon they had fought was one they almost died fighting, and that one being the guardian of the 7th circle, its name being called Amdusius, the Destroyer, as he is called. The fight with this demon almost cost the 3 women's lives, but they were able to beat him, leaving them very exhausted and injured greatly. They thanked their healing regeneration greatly for coming in handy. But once they came upon the 9th and final circle did things get very hectic. For leading them was Hellwing Naruto, calm as ever, blissfully ignoring all those around him. Even if he was being followed by 3 very beautiful demonesses and his rumored daughter who was by his side like always, looking around, her eyes taking all that was the last circle of hell. The 4 other than Naruki haven't changed all that much except for very small things like Kushina's change of clothing becoming more like Mito's own, with her wearing a battle-made kimono that fit perfectly snug on her body, showing her perfect hourglass figure, wide hips and DD bust her nodashi held in her right hand in a reverse grip as she too walked closely by Naruto's side. Over the past 7 years Kushina had become even more affectionate to Naruto to the point her small hugs became even more frequent, as did the ever so rare peck on his cheek. Though that has only happened 2 other times, then when he saved Naruki. Slowly glancing at him did she let out a small warm happy-filled smile as a pink hue crept up to her cheeks as she beheld his form. His endearing stature as always flowing out of him like a raging river that she found was one of the things she loved about him. Beside her was the equally smiling Mito, who had gazed at her sister counterpart, her beloved master. The 7 years have done her good, as she and Kushina had somehow in a way gotten closer to their master than ever before. Sheer Kushina didn't know how, but he seemed a bit more open than he ever was when they first started knowing him. Of course he was still the devil that made all of Makai shake and tremble at the mere mention of his name, his very presence striking the utmost fear into any and all residents of Makai's souls. Of course she and Kushina still had their moments, but those happened ever so rarely when they need a releasing outlet for their raging emotions, especially when they got very chaotic. As for Akemi, who walked beside Naruki, she ever so randomly glanced at Naruto before looking away as a flustered reddish hue appeared on her cheeks, which only happened when she looked at him or was in his very presence. It made her extremely happy to know she had made him give his approval to her every so often, especially when he saved her life 2 times. One on the training trip and the other from the letter from Ragnaros. She hadn't changed much either, except for her wearing something like Kushina was, a kimono made for close combat fighting, as it was her style to do so. It let Kushina hug her goddess-like body, showing her perfect-shaped hips and butt as her DD bust was shown with a small amount of cleavage due to her kimono. Her long crimson-red hair fell past her shoulder, touching her buttocks with 2 large bangs over his shoulders. Now the one who had undergone the most physical change would be the youngest of the group, that being Uzumaki Naruki, standing a good 5 feet 2 due to her good eating. Now she had a normal height for someone her age. She had a healthy pale tone like her mother, but her eyes just like her beloved papa's. Her hair, now longer than before, was like her mother's, long to where it fell below her lower back with streaks of golden within. Her heart-shaped face with little baby fat could be seen. Lastly was her developed low C-cup bust that was developing. And fast for her age as well. She was wearing something like her father than her mother, as she found it more fitting since she liked to fight up close and personal. So she wore an almost exact replica of what Naruto wore, only hers mainly red in color with the Uzumaki swirl embedded upon her cloak's back. She also had a katana strapped to her left hip, with her starting to learn the basics of kenjutsu. Upon her torso she wore a tight black t-shirt that was acting like a second skin. Upon her feet was black boots of some sort, that which Naruto had given her as a part of her training, which in reality was weight clothing. Enough said. As the group though traversed deeper into the end of the treachery circle of Makai, did Naruto narrow his eyes upon feeling something up ahead. This something though was in fact 2 Yukai signatures, one of which he already knew of. But the other he was not so sure about, for at first it was like Yami's own, but at the same time it wasn't. Who is this other person? 9th circle of Makai treachery final floor. Within the final floor in the 9th circle of Makai could we find Hellwing and his group finally stepping upon the final floor. And what they saw sent many of the women's faces into a state of both awe yet curiosity. Around them, spiraling up from within the ice-thick covered column that never ended, going on up, was glaciers of sorts on the walls, and within these glaciers was living people as the day they were born, screaming an agonizing silent scream as their bodies showed were blue or purple or even black from the immense coldness they were suffering from within the giant glaciers. As all the women gazed around, as did Naruki, Naruto himself was staring straight ahead at something that had caught his eye. And that was actually a prison cell in the circle known for its self-made prison with ice. He could feel that energy from before within there, and it was making him all the more interested of what exactly was inside there. He frowned though when he slowly glanced downward, only to see a pair of glowing green eyes staring back at him. He let out a grunt, getting the other female's attention as the ice before them slowly started to crack and break apart as a giant entity slowly rose up from beneath the giant crystallized ice sphere. This being made Naruki gaze in slight wonder, as it did the other three females, for they were staring up at what could be seen as a 50-foot-tall serpentine-like demon with a giant skull of a demon upon its head, with his hair being live snakes itself. His 6 limbs clenched and unclenched, showing his massive fists. The demon's green glowing eyes peered down on them all as its yokai seemed to pulse from him. Hellwing, what in Yami-sama's name are you doing here of all places? Spoke the giant snake demon. Naruto though just gazed up at him boredly before looking over at the prison cage behind the giant demon. Taking a step forward as he spoke, did he not spare a glance toward the demon that was peering at him as if he was the most interesting object in Makai. That is of no concern for you, Astaroth. I'm only here for something of personal value, and it would be in your best interest to get out of our way. He said, his words calm as ever. Yet without missing a beat, Naruto stopped as a giant fist came crashing down in front of him, making the area around them shake chaotically. Slowly glancing at the demon that blocked his path, did he meet the equally gaze of a pair of green-slitted eyes staring back at him. Ah, that is impossible, Hellwing, for no one is allowed past me unless it was Yami-sama. Other than him, anyone else is to leave or die by my hand. I was assigned by my master Yami to not let anyone past this point, and as Lucifer's former top general and Yami-sama's third strongest commander, I will not allow anyone, even you, pass by me, said the giant snake demon as he clenched his 6 fists, making him arms bulge in muscle and girth. His yokai seemed to burst from him, making Mito, Kushina and Akemi break out in a small nervous sweat. Naruki would have been harmed by this if not for Naruto standing in front of her, easily standing against the yokai pulse. If anything, it only made his hair billow slightly. Sighing, Naruto idly glanced at the battle-ready demon before slowly glancing at the prison cage, feeling the power within slowly spiking before calming. Astaroth, before anything else, what is inside that cage? Or the fact, why would a cage be in the last circle of Makai when its prisons is the glaciers itself? He asked, curious. He was yet not going to admit it. Astaroth, the demon's name being called, slowly turned its head toward the prison and glared, his yokai spiking just a bit more. You ask of something that's been kept secret and all but named a rumor in Makai. For within that prison cell made by Yami-sama himself is a being that Yami wants stay locked up here. No cell in this circle can hold this being. That cell is all that's keeping that person within. For within that cell is the rumored bastard child of Yami-sama himself, if that truly answers your question, Hellwing, spoke the demon guardian. Upon hearing this, did Naruto's eyes widen slightly at the news. His eyes seemed to glint a bit with an interesting flicker as he looked upon the cage behind Astaroth. He knew of the rumored child of Yami, god of Makai. The child being born a special hybrid of deity and devil like himself. It made him a bit interested what lay within that cell, but right now he had more important matters to attend to. Slowly glancing upward, did he see the glinting piece metal around Astaroth's giant neck. It was a skull medallion of sorts, but was a pure pitch black with 2 violet gems in its eye sockets. He suddenly smirked before speaking as he let his yokai spike just a bit. Astaroth, it is unfortunate for you that I'm not in the mood for games. Mito, Kushina, Akemi, you 3 stay back, you've done enough for today. And you, Naruki, go to your mother, he said, to which all 4 nodded, with Naruki following his command without hesitation. Seeing this done, Naruto looked back at Astaroth before he let loose a small glare, as his purple eyes now shifting into a more violet one that seemed to radiate an overwhelming power. Channeling his power outward, did Naruto let out a small grin as he watched Astaroth slither quickly at him, throwing a meteor-sized yokai-infused punch with enough power to level half of Ningenkai itself. Boom! Within the prison cell, the sound of a overbearing explosion rang true, it shaking the very foundations of the final circle. The ice prisons cracked or shattered, rattling chains sounded from within the pitch-black prisonary cell. Another explosion made a figure within this prison cell twitch, the person's face hidden from view as well as gender from the person's body too delved in the darkness. When the third explosion though happened, Did a pair of pale aqua-colored eyes slowly open, they showed the rushing feelings of confusion, a overwhelming hatred, a vengeful anger with a slight sign of betrayal. They lazily glanced around the prison around that had been the inmate's prison for so many years. That was when the person's eyes widened slightly when suddenly looking out at the frozen hell as it was called did the giant guardian demon known as Astaroth fall right in front of the prisoner's cage. Only the demon was missing his head. What the? Was the rough, dry yet surprisingly feminine voice from within as the person's eyes gazed upon the once thought undefeatable guardian. The prisoner's eyes now wide as can be at the dead demon in front of the prison. That is until the sound of footsteps could be heard. With Naruto we could find him standing in front of the decapitated Astaroth's head holding the medallion he held in his hand. He gazed at it for only a second before pocketing it away for now. After seeing Astaroth dead with a well-placed darkness-made blade he had grown a bit bored. So to sat his boredom and his ever-growing curiosity he had walked over to the prison that held within the famed bastard child of Yami. Following him quickly was the slightly stunned group of girls, as they followed after him or in Naruki's case ran up to his side and looked at the prison in confusement. Coming toward the prison did Naruto slowly glance inside only to see a shadowed figure within. He couldn't tell who or what it was because of the yukai blocking metal cage. He did however see a pair of pale aqua blue eyes staring back into his own purple ones. His own filled with impassiveness yet slight interest while the other was filled with both suspicion yet and great amount of shock for some odd reason. So, you're the rumored child of that oh so mighty Yami Naruto spoke neither caring he angered the person before him or not. Though he was pleasantly assured this child of Yami's held any love for him if the sight of the prisoner's eyes blazing up in a wrathful anger at the mere mention of the god of Makai's name. That fool isn't mighty at all, he is nothing more than a liar and a traitor even to his own family. I'd rather see him die by my hand than care for his pathetic traitoress. Naruto rose an eyebrow as the cold tone the person spoke in as it was filled with such spite and coldness that only he could give when truly annoyed. I see, so there's more to this than the rumors say, he muttered that as before Naruto peered back into the prison, his purple eyes staring back into pale aqua ones. He looked into the eyes of the rumored legendary child of Yami, one of his greatest of enemies, and yet he didn't feel compelled to end this one's life or just leave the prisoner locked away. If anything he felt the urge to actually release the person within, it was an urge to do so that he was quickly getting used to. As he stared into the eyes of the bastard child of Yami he could see the emotions clear as day and what he was seeing made him quirk an eyebrow. Single quote, comma, dot, dot. Do you want to be released? He asked, and just then Naruto saw it if for the briefest of seconds a flicker of hope at his words. The brief thought of finally escaping the prison was such a great feeling. Yet there was always a price. I do, but in payment what would you want in return? The voice cold and questioning as always. Naruto remained impassive to the question as he just leaned forward grasping the prison's cage. You really think I want anything physical value from you? No, I do not. All I truly want from you is information about Yami, other than that it's up to you on what you want to do when you have attained your freedom. He said, neither caring that much seeing as his suspicion was confirmed of Yami at least having a child. He waited for a response which he soon got after a few seconds passed. Information on my father. Hey, if it will do anything to harm him, then all I know is that his weaknesses from back then was he wasn't by any means a close combat specialist. Despite the rumors and legends, Yami is afraid to fight up close and personal due to his overall weakness in physical strength. His power lies with the elements of darkness and hellfire long-range attacks and the deity spells that bore him fruit as a deity. That is all I know before he imprisoned me in this god-forsaken prison. Raising an eyebrow at this, Naruto closed his eyes in thought, replaying the information given to him. He at first, when he was younger, was told Yami was an all-around fighter that led him to be well versed in all forms of combat. But with this new information for his battle against Yami that would most assuredly happen, he had no doubt in his mind it would bring him a somewhat edge over the deity of Makai and darkness. After a few tense seconds passed, Naruto slowly opened his eyes before he grasped the prison's cage, ignoring the Yukai blocking offensive spells. He spoke, "Very well, thank you for the information. I know you do not lie, for I can sense the honesty in each word you spoke. I can see you clearly despise Yami, as do I, probably not as much but enough so to say you'd like nothing more than to see him die." And with a quick show of his ungodly strength, Naruto ripped off the cage's door like it was nothing before throwing it away from him and his group, resulting in an echoing clang of steel hitting ice. Taking a step forward, Naruto pulled a lever at his right which made the suspended prisoner's chains slack before lowering said prisoner to the ground before the sounds of restraints being released with a loud click. Shortly after, the sound of slow small steps could be heard to where the shadowed person could be seen walking toward Naruto, who had at his side Kushina, Mito Akemi, while Naruki was at his other side looking on curiously. After this, the light from the outside able to come through after being blocked for so long by the door settled in, thus giving birth to the appearance of the chained-up prisoner inside. And what everyone saw upon the person walking into the new light was quite the sight to see. What everyone saw made Naruto let out a small smirk, as what he saw, the child of Yami that had been so mysterious until now, was in reality a female, since the gender was kept secret, and a secret that's been locked up tight. And what a beautiful, interesting female she was. For upon him right before his very eyes was a woman of such beauty, despite years upon years of imprisonment kept her goddess-like body. For the woman stood at a good 5'7" with a perfect hourglass figure that one could say it was purely divine in a way. Her fair slightly pink skin tone gave birth to a natural shine in the light as her rosy pink lips showed briefly of an almost permanent frown. Her most distinguishing feature was her long, somewhat spiky pink hair that flowed past her shoulder blades, with two other bangs of her pink hair going over her shoulder. Her hair went somewhat to her mid-back as it somewhat spiked in a natural flowing way. She wore a form-fitting sleeveless midnight black overcoat with it covering a crimson turtleneck-like shirt. Her DD-cup bust looked to be restrained yet was still recognizable. Upon her left shoulder was a metal pauldron, the color of which was pitch black with streaks of violet. Strangely, the pauldron looked reminiscent to a piece of armor from Naruto's own devil form. Spikes jutted out of the pauldron that which sparked ever so lightly. On her left arm down she wore black fingerless gloves with metal placings on the knuckles, while on her right arm down had the same glove, only on up was a red ribbon of some sort tied around her right arm. Below she wore a crimson-colored miniskirt that left an underlying teasing visage and also resulted in showing her perfectly slender legs. Her knee-high black combat boots with crimson metal spiked greaves strapped over said boots gave fruit to her more unique appearance. Lastly, strapped on her left side was a crimson cape of sorts that bore no symbolization other than it having the mark of Yami's army crossed out, signifying the woman's past with the deity's army forever gone. Lastly, attached behind her waist on down to her right was a black leather case about 5 feet in length, while from what could be seen a metal handle of some sort that glinted in the light, as did the woman's long pink hair. Upon looking at the woman, Naruto could definitely see how this woman gave off his same type of energy, seeing as she was the famed hybrid of a god and a devil like himself. He couldn't help but mentally chuckle at this new revelation. Truly it was an interesting concept, yet ironic as well. The devil race has always been mortal enemies to the deities, yet to see a cross of the two in the person he saw now made him beg to question the deity of Mikai's way of thinking. Then again, the fool has been said to be slightly insane. He pushed away those thoughts for now as he beheld the woman before him. He could see his slaves were surprised at her appearance, or in Naruki's case awed at such a beautiful woman's presence such as hers. Truly, even he had to admit the woman's appearance was unique, greatly so. But he was more inclined to the woman's attitude and power than appearance overall. Though what he didn't know was the woman was checking him out as well. Her eyes trailed over his appearance. What she saw was a handsome-looking male, that of which could ever rarely be seen in the realm of Mikai, where demons of such disgusting nature it was ever so rare to find a handsome-looking one out of any. But what she really saw was the man's signature markings that gave fruit to her suspicions of who exactly was before her. Even in her time of being locked up, she always heard news from the outside from Astaroth giving her that much. And she liked what she saw. The power coming off this man was enough to make her question if he was stronger than her own father Yami, for it just kept growing and growing by the second. Yet she could feel he was the same as she, only he being a full-blooded devil while she being half of the same race. She knew her power was immense for sure, but the power she sensed from Naruto's made her own look ever so small in comparison. It was like comparing a deer to a lion. No match whatsoever, and that thought strangely excited her in a way. Was it because of the enticing feeling of finding someone who could utterly annihilate you so easily? She didn't know, but for now all she will do is pay her respects to the man of Makai's legends. Slowly she kneeled down, bowing her head as she did so. My greatest of respects for freeing me despite the information I gave you. This is the most someone has ever done for me. To have freed me from my eternal imprisonment set by my father, you have gained my unending respect and undying loyalty. As my mother has taught me before she died, to you Hellwing Naruto, famed supreme devil of Makai and strongest demon titan, I hereby swear my allegiance to you forever. She said, her tone cold as always yet dignified and respectful to the one she was speaking to. Now upon hearing this, Naruto rose an eyebrow. He wasn't expecting something like this, especially not from the child of his second most hated enemy, second only to Lucifer himself. Then again, the woman hates her father with an undying hatred of some kind, plus he could sense her power, and while it was nothing compared to his own, it was nothing to sneeze at. It's around Kushina's and Mito's own level, if anything. Interesting. Looking down at the woman kneeling before him, did he eye her for a few seconds before letting out a sigh. I see. Then get up, for if honor does compel you to do this, then I shall not stop you. All I will say is that if you truly are wanting this, then you are welcome to do so, but do tell me the name of my new ally, he asked, to which the woman slowly stood back up to his request before giving a subtle nod. I thank you graciously for accepting. As for my name, it has been so long that I have almost forgotten it. My alias would be Lightning, but the name my mother gave me would be Claire. Nightwing Claire, she said with a small smile which seemed to light up her face all the more, thus making her all the more enticing. With that, Naruto and his group just gained another one to their group of an very special ally in the fight against Lucifer and Yami. Though if only Naruto truly knew how much Claire would be to him in the future. Oh, if only he knew. Hellwing Castle. Naruto's bedroom. Back at Hellwing Castle, the group of 5, now 6, returned to the castle, as well as giving Claire a place to stay, seeing as she had nowhere to go. It took a while to get back, but they did, and upon doing so did they situate themselves, as well as having the girls set up Claire's own room within the giant castle. Surprisingly, the girls were already growing attached to Claire in such a small amount of time it surprised even Naruto. Hell, even Naruki was calling her Light-Nei-chan, if you could really believe it. Hell, Mito, Kushina and Akemi took to her very quick, like when Naruki started to take to her. Since the trip back to the castle from the circles of Makai was a 4-day trip, it was understandable. Even the cold lightning had taken to the 4 girls in just those 4 days, especially Naruki. The exuberant pre-teen was an energetic little thing that always made a smile come up on her face despite how small it was. It was like she had gained a new little sister to the new life she was given. But the woman in just those 4 days could see that her new ally and more so leader was a strange man, yet a dependable, powerful entity. Of that she was most definitely sure of. She's been told of his latest actions against Lucifer, Yami, and even against heaven itself, and it honestly shocked her. To hear this man she allied herself with fought and rebelled against all possible supernovas of Makai and attacked one of heaven's most power legionary forces despite it being they provoked him was just plain insane. Yet impressive all the same. Her respect for him grew by leaps and bounds with each actions he's done in the past told to her by Mito or Kushina, but the true thing that she respected was that he wasn't some lust-filled being like many others in Makai. To have so many beautiful women in his presence and not stare at them lustfully like a wild dog was something that impressed her. At the moment within Naruto's very room we could find him asleep in his bed along with both Mito and Kushina, seeing as they surprisingly enough shared the same bed with him. Not in a physically romantic sense, of course, but with them sleeping on one side and he on the other, yet at times during the past 7 years as he caught them sleeping near his body or to the extreme hugging themselves to his body when he first wakes up. Though right now we could find him sweating with his eyes clenched tight as he kept shifting his head back and forth, his hands clenched the sheets tightly, borderline ripping them as he dreamt his dream. Or was it somehow a nightmare with how he was acting? In the depths of his mind we could find Naruto holding and clutching his head in some type of pain as multiple voices of a woman ranging to a young girl to a child passed him by. It made him hit the ground beneath his feet, causing it to crater and reshape as it was his mind. Letting out a small grunt of discomfort, did Naruto try to block out the voices in his head. Naruto-sama. Look. I did it. Spoke a young girl's voice, her long purple hair framing her childish face. Her wide excited ruby red eyes looked at him with such glee only a child could give as a big grin split her face. What? Naruto-kun, I'll catch up to you, just you wait. I will be the best apprentice you ever had. Said a older yet same voice of the young girl, only appearing much older, around the same age as Naruki. The girl's sharp ruby orbs gazed up at him with a happy smile adoring her face. It can't be. No. Naru-kun, I just wish this could all end, but like you've taught me, war is never ending in Makai or in the other 2 realms. It's a disease that never go away no matter how much you wish it to just disappear. Lucifer's intent though is worse than anything, and one day it's going to rupture Makai unless something happens. Spoke the same girl, only older than before, around the age of 18, her face now not a single shred of baby fat, yet her heart-shaped face desirable by all. Her narrow gentle ruby gems with her long flowing purple hair framing her face perfectly, giving her the more divine serene appearance. Naruto's eyes snapped open upon seeing this other memory before he repeatedly smashed his fist into the floor, causing a crater each time, getting bigger and bigger. That is before the same woman's voice spoke, only this time it was different. Slowly appearing in front of his kneeling position was the same woman, only this time her face was smiling at him. Somehow she was truly looking right at him, tears of both sadness and love cascading down her face. A somewhat fearful yet pleading expression upon her face. Her words soft as silk and gentle as the softest breeze echoed into his ears. Naru-koi, help, please help me. Naruto couldn't lost it. His anguished outrage roar sounded from within the depths of his mind before on the outside Naruto's eyes snapped open before he rose up with a quick snap. His eyes were wide as his shoulders trembled, sweat of nervousness poured down from his head and face. He grasped his face with his hand while muttering. Are you calling for me?